Come on, that woman, you heard this story. That woman came into the healing center late. It was 4:15. We were talking about football. Healing school had been over since 3:30, 3:40. We didn't usually go past 3:40. We started at 2:15. So it was just about, a little bit more than an hour, but there was about 15 minutes of singing too. And she comes in all twisted up, just walking like this. And she walked in 4:15, and there's about 3 or 4 ushers and myself talking about football. And she walks in and she looks at me because, back we wore ties and everything. And she said, "Are you the healing school instructor?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." She said, "Oh, good. She said, "I need you to pray for me." And I lifted up my watch and I clicked it. It wasn't an iWatch. And I clicked it like this and I tapped it like as though maybe something was wrong with my watch. And I said, "Oh." I said, "It's 4:15. She said, "Yes, it is." I said, "Well, you'll have to come back tomorrow." And she said, Why do I have to come back tomorrow? And I said, "Because healing school is already over." I said, "So you'll have to come back tomorrow." And then I started talking and I ignored her. I started talking to the guys. And all of a sudden she said, "You mean you're not going to pray for me?" And I said, "Well, people that want to get healed get here on time." "Do you know when healing school started?" She said, "Yes, it was 2:15. I said, "Why are you late?" Now see, you can think right now, you are just a hard, and you can put a lot of things after that. You know what I mean? You are just, you're just a man. See, but I do those things, and I did those things on purpose. To do what? Excuse me again. Well, we just make this a little bit wider, okay? For what purpose? To see what she wants. Do we just throw a prayer around? "Hey, pray for me." Well, what do you believe? Why do you want it? What do you think's going to happen? And what are you going to do when you get it? I wasn't asking for all that. I just wanted prayer. I know, but I want it to work. Otherwise, you'll go off saying God doesn't heal anymore. And then I'll hear somebody say, "Yeah, I didn't think he'd heal anyhow." Okay? Been in this too long, 35 years. Heard it all. "You're not going to pray for me?" I said, "People that want prayer get here on time." And then she started, you're not going to pray for me." I mean, it was kind of, every once in a while Aaron would say, "Did you make anybody cry today?" "You're not going to pray for me." And I said, "Well, on one condition." She said, "You'll pray for me?" I said, "On one condition." She said, "What's the condition?" I said, "You have to be healed." And she said, "Oh, that's why I came. I came to be healed." I said, "That means I pray for you and you run around the room." She goes, "Well, I mean, I'll be healed. You know." And I said, "The condition is that you get healed and you run around the room." And she said, "Well, I know I'll be healed." And I said, "Lady, you are late, and now you're messing this whole thing up." I said, "Get your brain in neutral." She said, "Neutral?" I said, "Neutral. Can you get in neutral like you're not thinking anything?" She said, "I'll try." I said, "Okay, let's see it." And this was the best part. And she just goes. I said, "You there yet?" She said, I'm getting close." I said, "Time's ticking. Hurry up." I said, and the ushers are looking at me like, "What's he doing?" And so finally she said, "I'm there." I said, "Well, thank the Lord." And then I went like this, "In the name." And she goes, "That's your prayer?" And I said, "At 4:15, that is all that's left." And then I grabbed her hand and I started running. And I dragged her halfway around the room. And she screamed and screamed. And when we rounded the corner, the power of God, boom, hit her, stood her up on her feet, and I watched her body crack, 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 crack. And then she took off like a shot. and took off running the rest of the way.
Praise God.
When I got to the front, she was doing all these stretches going, wow, I don't know where it is. Do you know where it is? I said, neutral, lady, neutral. I said, you want to find it? Oh, no. I said, well, then get your head out of it.